All right, welcome to the Coffee Break Podcast. Our mission here is to share business practices, ideas, and strategies while we enjoy our cup of coffee, and we're really excited to be here today. I'm Chad Lingefeld from Loc-Doc Security, and today's guest is Marko Galbreath from T4Tactics, and we'll be right back. Chris, roll that intro for us.
We got so much to say, we got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh yeah.
All right, welcome back, folks. I'm glad to have you here today, Marko.
Great to be here.
So thanks for traveling in. Before we get into a whole lot of stuff, but you traveled all the way down from Lynchburg, Virginia, where you're headquartered out of, to be with us today. That's really exciting.
Yes, yeah, very, very excited to be here. I've been listening to your podcast, and I just a lot of great information.
Well, I appreciate it. We make up most of it, so
yeah, that's okay. We're going to do that today.
Well, so this is season 2 of our podcast. We've got a whole season 1 with 20 episodes. We started, I think, in August of last year. For those of you, maybe this is your first time watching or listening, but we've got all that information on our website, locdoc.net/podcast. But we're starting season 2, and so as part of season 2, we're going to try a couple of new little things. And so you're one of our guinea pigs on our kind of some new formats and
All right.
and new segments. So we're going to do a rapid fire, 5 rapid fire questions just to get to know you a little better. That work?
I'll do my best. My best Joe Friday. I'll fire right back.
All right. Last thing that you listened to, song or whatever. Last thing you were listening to.
5 Finger Death Punch on the way here.
5 Finger.
Yeah. Bad Company gets me going in the morning. It's my workout, my gym music.
There you go. All right. What is the fastest that you've ever driven in a car?
85 miles per hour legally in South Texas.
Really?
The speed limit's 85. I'm driving a rental car, 4-cylinder, going down to Sutherland Springs Church, and I've got that engine winding out. But I watched the speed limit go from 70, 75. Oh, you got to be kidding me. 85.
Wow.
Legal. Yeah, it was fun. Try it. It's fun just to fly out there and do that.
Yeah. What is your middle name?
Andrew.
Andrew.
Yep.
Ah, interesting. Yeah. If you had the choice between invisibility or super strength, what would it be?
Well, I already have super strength, so I'll go with invisibility. Then I can have both, right?
There you go. And then last, what is your favorite day of the week?
Wow, probably Sunday. For me,
Yeah.
It's a chance to relax, not work.
Yeah.
Spend time with my wife and dog, and go to church, and just count my blessings.
This is not one of the rapid fire questions. What kind of dog do you have?
Doberman,
109-pound
Doberman.
There you go.
And he is just a big love muffin. He is. He's a good guy, very approachable. You raise them how you want them to be.
Sure.
And he's a good boy.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here again. We're drinking coffee this morning. Kevin Starr, one of our account managers, came in this morning with a bag of some new roast. It's like butter pecan or something like that.
Some blueberry flavor too is hinted in there. I think.
It's full of flavor this morning.
It is.
So,
good.
well, let's get into the conversation. By way of introduction, I want you to kind of give us a little bit of a 30,000-foot overview of who you are, and then we'll get into kind of how we got to know each other. But just kind of give us a little bit of background on what you've been up to, and how you arrived here.
Okay. I retired. I worked in law enforcement in the Daytona Beach area for 22 years. Born and raised there, third-generation native. After retirement, my wife and I wanted to get out of where I worked. She's from Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and that was too far north for me to move. So Lynchburg, Virginia was a nice area. We like it.
You got a medium ground.
A medium, yeah. You get all the seasons. Born and raised in Florida, I never got the chance to experience seasons. It's all hot.
Yeah.
That's all we get down there. So I wanted to move out, and I had been a firearms instructor for 17 years in the police department.
Okay.
And so I was familiar with that. And when I retired in 2007, I wanted to continue doing something that I knew, which was firearms. I was a homicide investigator, SWAT team, hostage negotiator, commander, special investigations unit. So I knew active shooter. Unfortunately, I knew homicide and death investigations. So I saw a need for that. So when we moved up to Lynchburg, I created T4Tactics, which first primarily started out as firearms training, and now it's transitioned into active shooter response training.
Yeah.
With a little bit of firearms training on the side. But we do firearm safety classes. We do classes for small kids to teach them what to do if they ever find an unsecured firearm. Just 2 days ago, we had a 4-year-old find a gun and accidentally shoot a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
So it happens. So it's more firearm safety. I don't sell any product. I don't sell firearms, ammo. I sell education.
Sure, yeah.
To keep people safe. That's our number one goal.
So it's interesting. I don't know, it's probably a year or so ago now. We have a mutual friend, Steve Bryson from Security Lock and Key up in Lynchburg and Roanoke, Virginia area.
Great guy.
Well, I mean, it's
but I'm saying that because I'm on air and he's probably listening. We'll
sure.
talk later. Sorry,
but,
Steve.
He came down. We met. We were chatting about a lot of different stuff, and he said, "Hey, there's this guy that I know, Marko, and you really need to get to know him. He's a really good guy. Got a lot of good information." All right, okay, thanks, Steve. You know, and then I think like a couple of months, maybe it was last summer, I came up to Roanoke for a ballistics glass demonstration.
Yes. Yeah.
And you were there.
Yeah.
Shook your hands. Okay, cool. And then just kind of continued conversation happened where it's been really neat to be able to kind of get to know you and to kind of to learn more about what you do, and then kind of start thinking about just on a different level from not necessarily what you do, but the why behind what you're going about doing. And I think that there's a lot of parallels there. So one of the cool things, and it's kind of the heart of the conversation that we want to get into today on collaboration, is talking about how you go about business. And one of the key factors, and we were talking about it this morning before we kind of got in here, was how you got to meet Steve Bryson and how you kind of utilize that in your business, and how you both kind of connect together to solve problems for customers. So I guess let's talk about that. Let's get back to, how did you meet Steve? Because that's a mutual connection for us. So I think we should kind of draw that conclusion and then kind of work into how you're utilizing that for your business.
Okay. I was in the Bedford Chamber of Commerce building conducting some business, and here's this 8-foot guy that walks up to me who I don't know, and he says, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, okay, well, my cop personality kicked in, like, well, who are you? And let me see some ID,
Yeah.
And so we started talking, and then I started seeing him around.
He does look like a little bit of a shady character.
He
though,
does,
right?
absolutely, he does. And so we started talking, and then I started seeing him around different events.
Yeah.
I started looking at his company, started watching him, and we started networking together and referring each other. And then this is after about probably 8 months of knowing each other.
Yeah.
Steve's company and my company will vet somebody very well before we recommend them or get into business with them.
That makes sense.
So I felt comfortable with them, and we've done tremendous work together. But just that simple, him contacting me and with a handshake at the Bedford Chamber office, and then I see him here and there, it's done great things for both of our companies, and for people.
And so it's one of the levels of collaboration. I was thinking about it as preparing for this conversation today, where you both are in the kind of security business very loosely.
Yeah.
But the way that you go about it is completely different.
Right.
You're offering education on reactive events and proactive training, and what Steve and like a company like ours is offering the physical products to help to secure facilities or surveil facilities or whatever. The connection there again is kind of far apart, but it's also very well connected. Are there other ways that you've been able to, maybe not outside of the security world, that you've been able to do something similar, that you've seen those connection points?
I get aggravated when I call a business and I get the push 5 for this, push 1 for, and you get in that loop, or they don't answer the phone, or they don't call you back, or they don't do an email. So one of the things I've found works for me is I'm a small one-man show. My wife helps me out. I get interns from Liberty University,
Gotcha.
Which are a huge help. But I always make sure I answer the phone. I always make sure that the client, whether it's somebody for firearms training or whether it's active shooter response training, regardless, they talk to me within the day that they leave the message or the email. So that's really worked for me. And just networking and ethics and doing the right thing. But I think to answer your question is I like that personal. You're going to talk to the owner. That way I know what's being said. I know what's being put out there, and I can answer their questions.
Sure. And for solopreneurs, that's one of those things where like you are your brand.
Right.
It's something that you have to navigate.
Right.
But then when you the I guess the other side of that is when you are a solopreneur, we've had a lot of those in the seats. It's you only have exposure to the people that you are directly connected with.
Right.
So then utilizing collaborative efforts of utilizing the ability to, hey, I know this person. How can we connect better, and how can we get to know each other? And not necessarily, because this is, I think, one of the parts of it that gets confusing from time to time is that people are just making connections to use people, right? They're just making connections.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that a ton of times.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, so it's got to be like a real organic, authentic partnership of, hey, this is what we can do, and it's not just, hey, you refer me and I refer you type thing. We've all been to those networking events.
Yes,
here's my business card.
Refer me, and I won't do anything for you. Yeah. There's a lot of those networking groups out there, unfortunately. Steve, and with Security Lock and Key, the relationship we have is we're not interested in exchanging money, or I'll buy you a free lunch if you refer me. It's simply doing what's right for the client.
Sure.
And there's been times when Steve, and I was impressed because I've heard that Steve has gone in to give an estimate to a church that I've referred him to. I've done their training, and I've said, you need cameras, key lock, key access. And Steve has said, you can do it less expensive this way. Yeah. To me, that means a lot, because that puts ethics and faith into that business, to what he's doing. He's not just out going to try to make that dollar. He's doing what's right for the client. Yeah. That's somebody that I want to be hooked up with.
Well, the other part of that too, when you talk about collaborating with other people, it's finding a company that picks up where you leave off.
Absolutely.
Right? And so in what you do, which we can get more into that, but what you do, you don't handle the physical security component of it, but you do everything leading up to it.
Right.
And so it's at that point saying to the customer, hey, to the client, this is what we offer, this is what I do. I leave off here. These people pick up here.
Right.
If you want to proceed with that, that's fine. I have no commission off of it.
That's right.
It's like a true, honest handoff, which is really cool.
Right.
And I think that it's, again, like you said, provides the added value for the client at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So one of the other conversations that we got into from a collaborative effort was how you made a statement earlier about you never know who you're talking to.
You're right. Wow.
You get in a room, you never know who you're dealing with.
Right.
We talk about it here in regards to this particular medium with podcasting, with the videos that we do, is we're not really trying to produce content for the masses, the millions. We're producing content for one person.
That's right.
Don't know who that one person is, but that one person may hear some information that's going to help them in some way.
That's right.
But that's what we're producing content for. And you made mention of that earlier. Kind of dive into that topic.
When I first started transitioning into active shooter training, I had a rather small insurance company. I don't ever mention my clients' names because it's of what I do, so I don't put the client's name out there. But it was a fairly small insurance company, and I did active shooter training for about 6 of their board members. And there was one guy in there that was so impressed, he had me come to Greensboro, North Carolina, and introduced me to an insurance company that has me go all over the country, speaking to probably about 600 or 700 people a year over the time of different locations.
Yeah.
And, I always remember, and I always tell people in these networking and community events, that you never know who's in the room. That one guy was impressed with what I did, told somebody else, and it blossomed. So because that one guy told this insurance company, for instance, I went out to Dallas a few weeks ago and did a presentation to about 200 people. That has now spun out to about 4 businesses wanting me to come back out to Austin, Waco, Dallas, Sutherland Springs, and teach their business. So you've always got to go do a good job, because you're always going to get referrals from who's in there if you do a good job.
Yeah, it's one of the there's a lot of people, and I get frustrated with this all the time, that people want you to fill out a survey after the sale,
right?
Because I need high marks because my pay relies on it,
right?
And so people are giving you a false scorecard,
right?
But then you get into understanding that doing a good job in front of the right people will always bring you a high-level scorecard because they're going to tell people about the experience.
Word of mouth is huge.
In a world where we live in this kind of marketing focused, that's just what you do, is you're always trying to tell your story, tell what you're doing. But so there's this side, and this is what I think is interesting when you talk about the one person, the always being on your best because you don't know who you're in front of.
Right.
Is you also have to take into account that you have to be willing to tell your story, not in a pushy, aggressive way, but to be able to tell and share your story because you never know who's listening, and how that's going to impact them. So it's interesting that you from just one thing, and again, the other part of that too, man. I know I'm jumping all over the place here, but a lot of people get stuck on that one experience. Okay, so you presented that one thing in front of the board of directors, but what led you up to that? How many years had you been preparing to get to that?
22 years. I was an instructor in the police academy 17 of my 22 years. And then I've got probably 15 years experience in college classrooms teaching. So I feel comfortable in front of people. Yeah. And so that, but my whole police career through taking classes, going to these horrible scenes and handling them, I feel led me up to this. Sure, yeah, to the active shooter.
Everything you do prepares you for the next phase in life.
It's experience, absolutely. Yeah.
But a lot of times people get stuck on that one thing, that big break, and it's like, well, they were just lucky. They got lucky in right place, right time.
It was hard work.
They don't focus on all the hard work that got you to that point.
To get into that insurance company in the first place, it took me a lot of hard work. I had to do a lot of free presentations, which is fine. Sure. But I've done a lot of free work in the beginning, and I still do, stuff for the community, get the word out there. Because my number one goal, personal goal, is not to become a gazillionaire doing this, but to reduce injuries and save lives. Yeah. I want to get people trained and educated to handle some of these attacks.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about obviously knowing the why. That's a big theme in small business right now, knowing your why. And this one guy said, he was like, well, I mean, some people's why is to make gobs of money. Yeah. And if that's your why, then that's fine. Yeah. Own it.
Right, right.
But if it's not, and you have another focus, then understand what that is and understand how you can make the most of it.
Yeah, there's a balance to it. Yeah.
I want to get into a little bit of what you do. And how you go about it, because I think that's interesting. And then I want to try to flip that over into an analogy from a small business perspective from preparation. So tell us a little bit about what you do from a active shooter preparedness training, and then we can kind of walk through that process.
Okay. So the T4Tactics, people always say, how'd you get the name T4Tactics? It's the top 4 organizational skills you need to survive an attack.
Gotcha.
And the first one is the most important, threat assessment. If we can, and all these have huge subfolders, but the first threat assessment is if we can recognize a threat and shut it down before it gets inside, we've won. So that's where we lock the doors. We put cameras up. So what you and I do work hand in hand. We have to know how our body's going to react. At 180 beats per minute, we're going to get totally upside down. A lot of people don't realize when we're sitting here and we hear boom, boom, boom. Yeah. How goofy you're going to get. There's a lot of things that happen.
Well, just case in point, 30, 40 minutes ago, we were sitting in the office over here drinking coffee, and all of a sudden we heard this loud pop.
Right.
And what happened? We looked up at the screen, and everybody in the office started heading to the back door to go to where that pop happened.
To go to the threat, right?
Yeah, and a tire blew. Yeah, a tire just exploded in the back.
But I'll tell you also, a couple of the guys here went to their phones, their smartphones, and looked at cameras and saw what was going on out there before we rush out there. So that's 1 and 2, and then you have to. The third one is you have to have a plan. You've got to have a plan on what's going to happen. Your plan B in case something happens. And then the fourth one is recovery. You've absolutely got to have. We were talking about an incident that happened to you guys yesterday. You have to have a recovery plan if something happens, because when something happens, you're upside down. Yeah. Who's going to notify next of kin? Who's going to handle the police, fire, and media that are outside? You have to have. I mean, the recovery plan is the second attack. If you don't have a good recovery plan, that's going to be your second attack. Is your business is going to go down the tubes because you haven't thought about people who are going to come in and counsel for grief. Yeah. How are we going to how we're going to return back to work when things have gone terribly wrong.
It's interesting. One of the kind of catchphrases that we use around here, we've got it plastered on our walls: prior planning prevents poor performance.
Yes.
And it's exactly what you're talking about is understanding the whole of the scenario.
Right.
You've seen it happen, and if I'm not mistaken, you have gone and interviewed people post incident to understand what all of the scenarios that happened, the cause and effect and all that, right?
Yep.
So you get a better understanding of what that is. So you're assessing a previous event so that you can understand how to prep for it better in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're consulting with facilities, school systems, churches, small businesses,
everything,
large businesses, anybody that has people to say, what is your plan? And one of the things I think you tie into a lot, you talk about a lot is we have plans oftentimes for inclement weather.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about that, how you set that up.
We knew that this last hurricane, I can't remember the name of it because we had a couple in a row. This last hurricane that flooded North Carolina.
Yeah.
We knew a week and a half that it was coming. A week and a half in advance it was coming. We know with the tornado, the forecaster is going to tell us you're going to have a tornado. We got chances for a tornado tomorrow, and in the next hour we're under a tornado warning. We don't have that luxury for active shooter. So when we know that a hurricane's coming or a tornado, well, let's go read the policy and see what the policy says.
Yeah.
But active shooter, when you hear boom, 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 there's no time to run to that book and read it. You have to be aware of it and have a plan. And that's facilities. Can stop a lot of these threats just by their setup, cameras, key access, keeping certain people out of certain areas.
Well, the thing on that too, and I think a valuable benefit is okay. So we recently just put in place an inclement weather plan for cases like hurricanes and snow, because we get lots of snow down here. But we had to put a plan in place because we got to the point of growing. We've got 31 people in our organization now. And 5 years ago when it was 15, well, we could communicate that out a little easier.
Right.
Years before that, when it was less than 10 of us, we could communicate it real fast, and it was not a big deal. As your organization expands, then it's the way that you're communicating the information. If it's in your head, is one thing, but it is still a reactive measure.
Mm-hmm.
So you've put in place an inclement weather plan, or if this happens, this is what we're going to do plan. When it comes to something like active shooter or something outside that realm, even inclement weather, you can kind of pull some pieces of a puzzle together.
Right.
Maybe it requires an expert to come in, but it's hey, if it's ice on the road, don't drive.
Right.
I don't know that requires an expert, but when you get into something like active shooter, you could come up with your own base level plan. But there's a lot, if you go into the process of the things that you know and the things that you know that you don't know, comes into that category.
Right.
I need to rely on somebody outside of this organization that's got some other experience in this capacity to help me walk through this process. And that's what you do.
Yeah, and that's why I've taken the time to travel the country, and I actually go to some of these unthinkable events after the dust has settled and talk to law enforcement, victims, witnesses, and survivors, because what people need to hear is not what I've learned from sitting in a class, who's someone that saw it on CNN or Fox or the news or read it in a magazine. They need to hear what this person says, and I ask them, tell me about how your day started. What was your normal day like? Because nobody thinks it's going to happen to them. And then I tell them, what did you think when you first heard those shots and those screams?
Yeah.
That's what people need to hear is what human beings, how they reacted, what happened. And that's how we're going to beat these things, is to do a debriefing on all these incidents from primary source information and get people trained.
But the kind of concept behind it, the structure behind what you do is really can be replicated in all aspects of business preparation.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Because it's assessing what happened, taking practical application and assessing whatever it is your process that you're trying, an inventory process or a sales cycle or whatever.
Yeah,
same thing.
Right.
Assessing it, getting feedback.
Yeah,
and then practicing.
Yep.
Right. So you talk about this implementation and the practice, because the one of the things that I've heard you say that really stuck out is when your heart rate elevates, when you get into that zone of high level adrenaline or panic or whatever, what are you going to do?
Right.
We talk to these people all the time, or you hear people, it's very common. Yeah, I keep my shotgun beside my bed, and my pistol here. And if I hear somebody breaking in my house, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Until somebody breaks into your house, and you're like, wake up.
You better practice it. That's right.
So having a plan for not only that, but for every area of your business and practical application, and then practice. Right. That's I think that's a key factor of this whole thing. Is you can even have a active shooter plan in place. If it's not being practiced, then who's going to dust it off when it's ready? Right.
You've got to develop muscle memory.
Yeah.
In it, and it's not, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So you have to do it right. Just like in a business plan, it's got to be done right. You got to constantly be thinking about it. And it's not fear. It's not paranoia. We don't teach fear. I don't go in there and try to scare people. It's simply I go in doing these debriefings, giving them the education and the confidence they need to survive something like this, and to recognize the threat and shut it down. Best way to win a fight is not being one in the first place. Walk away from it.
Sure. So one of the things that you mentioned multiple times is people think it's never going to happen to me.
Right.
Take that into a active shooter situation. Take that into any type of catastrophe in a business at all. That's the way that we all operate. This is never going to happen.
Right.
Yesterday, like we talked about the incident yesterday, and I found myself. We've worked through these processes and plans of all this stuff, but I found myself standing there, staring at the situation, going, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe this happened."
Right.
And everything that you've done from a planning state, it's no good unless you activate it.
Right.
And so the practice part of it is what helps to activate it in those situations.
Right. Yeah. And you got to, we teach breathing techniques, control techniques. We teach how to get yourself, when we hear those shots ring out, our computer crashes in our head. I'm pointing our head on radio. But our computer crashes. And so we teach things that you can do when you get locked down in an area of safety, things you can do to reset your computer so you're thinking normal.
Yeah.
Because if we stay in panic mode, we're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
So there's techniques we teach to calm people down and get back on track.
I had a conversation the other day talking about decision paralysis. Right.
Yeah.
So you have all these options. You know the things that you need to do, but you just don't make the action on it. And I can see that happening. It's again. You take what you do and then specifically to that, but then you apply it to whatever you want. Like you can take it to any scenario, and you go back into that same process of what's the plan, what are the outcomes, what are the results, and then none of it's good until I take the action.
Right.
So what is that trigger point, and how can we process that to take the action? Right.
You've always got to have a plan B. And we're not talking active shooter, scenarios, but even in business. You've got to, I believe you have to have a plan B. If this doesn't work for me, then I'm going to go to this and make that plan A work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's constant reassessment.
It
constant
is.
Tweaking.
It is. It's constant tweaking.
Yeah. And any plan that one may have, that's one thing that I'm sure that you talk with people about a lot is you can have a plan in place, but if you're not constantly assessing it, then because things change.
Right.
Well, we did that 10 years ago. Well, there's a lot that changed.
Absolutely.
I know in our business, it's every 6 months. I mean, you could reassess a process and could be completely different.
Right. Yeah.
So that's just part of the thing. So getting back into the collaboration, okay? So you're meeting with people, you're sharing ideas with people, and then you're kind of growing together. What are some of the big takeaways, maybe something for our listeners, our audience that can say, hey, this is a huge benefit. This is something that I learned maybe the hard way, or maybe this is something that I found to be beneficial, referring back to, collaborating with other people or working with other people on those processes that we can all kind of take away.
Going back to me answering the phone, and I really try to put a personal touch into this. And this isn't just for my business, but other businesses bring that personal touch in. When I do active shooter facility reviews and come in and suggest locking doors, key access, cameras, safety glass, every single place I go is personal to me.
Got it.
So it's not one size fits all. It's not a glove. I go in and look at the facility, then I do a presentation based on their facility. Because when I'm talking to the employees and training them, it makes more sense for me to be able to say, you know how when you walk down that long hallway in the back by production and you take a left to the loading dock, they're understanding what I'm saying.
Sure.
So for me, if I can bring the audience into letting them know that I've taken a personal ownership of what I'm doing here, I think that draws them in, and I think that works for me. That's been the biggest thing that works for me, is let them know that I'm just not here to change a certificate for money. I'm here to personally train you for your site. But to me, collaborating with businesses, I really think spend a little extra time with the bosses and management and the line staff. I go around and talk to all the line staff, so I'm not just talking to bosses or HR or the environmental safety people.
Just kind of understand what everybody's doing.
Exactly, everybody. But for me, collaborating, with other businesses as well, has worked for me very well. But that personal approach, I just sometimes you get businesses that come in and say, well, we're doing this. Okay, here you go, we're done.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa, what just happened here? I don't feel like we connected.
Yeah.
And so for me, I like to connect with my clients, and that's worked for me. And whether I'm doing active shooter training or I'm working with another business, maybe they're doing something for me.
Sure.
I like that connection.
So it's almost like you're in a constant state of learning.
Absolutely.
Wanting to connect with people and understand exactly where they're at.
We're always learning. The news, when we were talking earlier, the news had interviewed you guys, and I do some news interviews, and they always say, we talk to an active shooter expert. I'm not an expert, because I personally think that if you label yourself as an expert, there's no more room to learn. Yeah. And I'm constantly learning. I mean, all the time. I think we all are.
Sure, yeah.
Every day we come to work, we have to have that open mind that I may be the boss or the owner, but I'm here to learn from people. Yeah. Even at some of these network meetings, I pick up so much. Networking is huge. Steve, I know you're listening. He'll tell you networking is huge. Yeah. Just go out and talk to people.
Just talk with an open mind. Not that you're trying to tell somebody something, but talk to them to learn.
Right. Yeah. And it's not always getting my business name out there. It's not all that. It's sometimes let me learn from you. Let's work for each other. Yeah. But an example of the podcast is you guys don't push Loc-Doc. You're helping other people. Yeah. And that's what it's all about. But that's, collaborating with other businesses, I really feel is huge. Yeah. Whether it's for personal gain or just to help them out. Sure. You do something good for somebody, it's going to come back later on the road down to you.
Outrageous generosity. It's one of our core values that we
absolutely
that we're trying to walk in. I appreciate you coming in. This has been awesome conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
Our time is kind of coming to a close, but I did want to make note that we always are trying to bring valuable tactical content for our listeners. That's just kind of the mission behind. When we started this process, we said we don't want to just have, like you just said, we don't want to just have a podcast that says, hey, we're Loc-Doc. We want to actually give people something of value to take away, and I think you did that today. As I said earlier, if this is your first time listening or watching on Facebook, then we want to invite you to subscribe. We have a whole season 1, 20 episodes that are live right now that you can go check out. It's at locdoc.net/podcast, and you can see that there. We do a new episode every Tuesday. We record most of them live on Facebook at 9 a.m., and we invite you to join us back for that. But you can subscribe at iTunes, Stitcher, Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. You can find us there just by searching Loc-Doc Security or the Coffee Break Podcast. So check that out. We want to hear from you, so make sure you visit us there, locdoc.net/podcast. Comment and let us know if you have any questions on that. Next week, we're going to have one of our own guys in here. Levi Gray will be in the guest chair, and we'll be talking about workflow improvements. And we're really excited to dive into that. We've got an awesome year planned out that we've been working on, some amazing guests, and really excited to share all of the content with you guys as we move forward. But until then, we'll see you next week right here on the Coffee Break Podcast. To learn more about the topics discussed today and to connect with us online to hear all of the episodes available, visit locdoc.net/podcast.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break.
The Coffee Break Podcast is brought to you by Loc-Doc Security. We'd love to connect with you online on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Just search LOCDOCINC.